Before 2 p.m. meeting, and with Mr. Wright just walking in, we just hit our quorum to be able to conduct business today. So I appreciate everyone attending and coming in. Especially being that it's June and hot, summertime is always an interesting time to do these sorts of meetings, so thank you for your attendance. So we'll start with Ruth, if you could just call the roll.
Mr. Galloway,
Present.
Jenny Mead, or Cameron Moore, Michael Payne, or Lloyd Smith.
I guess I'm in his place.
Yes. Bree Murray Key, Ron Williams,
Present.
Rachel Jones, Jesse Rutherford,
Here.
Diane McKeel,
Here.
Margaret Claire, or Kim Highland,
President Kim Highland.
Keith Smith,
Here.
Christopher Vermont, Emily Dreyfus, here. Greg Powell,
Here.
William Hart,
Here.
Peter Homan, Shayla Washington, or on view. Sunshine Bacon, or Alicia Garcia.
Yes, good afternoon.
Dan Rosenzweig,
Here.
Colette Sheehy, here. Kenny Allison. Great, and we have two folks online that will need to vote to not participate.
And that is Ms. Highland and Ms. Garcia.
Yes.
Ms. Garcia, if you could just please state your location and your reason for participating electronically, please.
Yes, good afternoon. I am in Charlottesville, Virginia, attending virtually due to scheduling.
And Ms. Highland, if you could do the same, please.
Kim Highland, Fluvanna Louisa Housing Foundation. I am in Scottsville, Fluvanna today and attending remotely due to schedule conflicts.
Thank you. We'll need a motion to allow them to participate electronically. So, I'm second. All right, we have Mr. Poe on the first, Diana on the second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Great. So you guys are in the meeting, and when we call any votes, you'll be able to just unmic or unmute and voice your vote. Go to comments from the public. Is there anybody here who wishes to give public comment today? Is there anyone online who wishes to give public comment today? This is the first time I've seen a AI meeting notes. What is that?
It's not ours.
Somebody's got AI taking notes. Interesting. All right, we'll close comments for the chair. Item number 3, our consent agenda. We need to approve the minutes of March 27, 2024. And then we also have our fiscal year 24 year-to-date financials, which were included in the packet. Any notes on that?
We are still over budget. No surprise there.
Nice. July 1.
One cannot, exactly.
Is there a motion to, we'll just do the whole consent agenda if there's no changes or edits? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All right, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Great. And that will take us to item 4. We have some action items here related to both our bylaws and our executive committee appointments. Now, how this will work specific, we got a couple of nuances here to do, which will follow by a couple of the motions, but additional members by petition is one, where we're basically allowing new members to petition to join the partnership. And then we would take a vote to accept, but in order to us to vote to accept, we have to first allow that procedure in the bylaws. So that is one of the changes we're making to the bylaws. And then today we do have some appointments that we would take to consider their partner or their membership. And that would both be to the executive committee and to the general partnership, is my understanding. Ruth, any, back me up on anything that I stated?
No, that's great. We can go over the details. quick presentation on the bylaws.
Yep. But we go through the other bylaw changes that are up for consideration.
Sure. So we have amended the bylaws before. Partnerships been around for a few years now, and we've had a few things that aren't working quite the way we would like them to. One thing, we currently have a 21 member body. We added the Blue Ridge Health District as a member a little over a year ago. We've had a number of groups request to become members of the partnership. Both private organizations and just individuals who are really interested in what the partnership wants to do. And it has been challenging for this body to activate the advisory members as a group. So what's being proposed is allowing for additional members by petition. So I have proposed a modification that says the membership will be at a minimum the following 21 members, and then it has the list. And then additional voting members may be approved by the executive committee upon addition to the chair. Although for today's purposes, it may make more sense to have it be approved by the whole partnership or the executive committee. I'll leave that to you all to determine. Do you have questions about this particular change in bylaws?
Questions or comments?
Or comments? Yes.
Sounds fine to me. In principle, I think typically membership in an organization is about typically not something delegated to the executive committee. So
Perfect.
I would be in favor of
The full partnership.
If I could offer one comment,
Yes.
before Michael sits down and I get moved out of your bylaw here says we follow 21 members and it lists 22 members.
It does.
Thanks. So we're probably going to change 21 to 22.
Okay. Thank you.
Assuming that all of the numbers are intended to be, for all of them are one except for.
The last two are duplicate, actually. The appointed industry representative of Blue Ridge Health.
Okay, that gets
It's
us
the
to
same thing.
21.
Sorry, thank you.
The only other comment related to that is that, as a matter of style,
Yes.
one paragraph down, voting members shall recommend, need to add a comma there for executive committee member approval, comma, since you've got a comma at the end. You come to.
Thank you.
Now, Michael, you're back at the end of voting member.
All right. Maybe you should post it. I wasn't here to hear the items, but
And we would be changing that obviously to full partnership.
Yes.
This was born out of the strategic plan. The consultant that did work, talking about other members, and there seemed to be general agreement on the executive committee and otherwise that it would be okay to help bring on additional members to participate if they were wanting to do so. Even if they already, one of the categories was fit, so that was kind of where the ball got rolling on this side.
I'm not going to die myself with this. I mean, it's just typically the way it's done, but I'm.
Oh, no. The strategic thing, not the I'm not talking about who votes on accepting them, just allowing others to come in
Oh,
and us sign off on.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
All right. And the next change that's being recommended, there's currently a no limit to the number of terms that someone can serve on the executive committee. The terms are considered annual. One thing that has come forward is that it would be good to have a change of membership of the executive committee on a somewhat regular basis, while also ensuring that we don't have all of the executive committee turnover at once. So what I've proposed is changing it from an annual term to a 2-year term. So you stay on the committee for a couple of years and limit the number of consecutive terms to 3. So you could be on for 6 years total. I know that we have a couple of people who are interested in stepping down. One has said that they are stepping down this year. Are there questions about this? Would anyone like to see it worded differently? We can always go back and revise it if it turns out terribly.
Are there term limits for board members?
No.
No, but and then we'll talk about when we get there, some of the changes that we'll make to the executive committee specifically. That's been discussed too at the executive committee a couple times, so it's not brand new information.
Yeah, and then we've also, the nominating committee had, was it the nominating committee or the executive committee was talking about, voting for officers for this next year, and it had been suggested that perhaps having, officers serve in their current role for more than 2 years would be desirable if there wasn't a good successor immediately available. And so I'm suggesting changing officers being allowed to serve 2 years to be 4 years instead. So you can still have that.
Dramatically, saying if you follow that.
Right, 2 years plus 2 years. Nothing.
Oh, you mean the 2-year term and the other?
Yeah. So that's somewhat redundant.
Okay.
I think it's just a wording. thing.
Yeah.
So you're saying that the officer could follow the term of the actual seat on the executive committee if you're an officer. So 2 years, no more than 3 terms.
Yes.
Would be consistent with that. I mean, I don't have an issue with that. But I see what you're
And is it,
getting at.
is it in the bylaws that the executives are selected from the executive committee members?
Yes. Sorry, the officers are selected from the
The
executive
officers.
committee members. So if you want somebody to be an officer of the partnership, they will need to be an executive committee member.
I think that's advisable.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think we just need to, we can approve this to match the language of the terms for the non-officers to the officer positions.
Okay. So their offices will be 2 years and then 3 consecutive terms. So it'll be the same as the executive committee members.
I think that's the intent.
Okay.
Okay.
There will be a summary of the changes as a separate page at the end of the bylaws, should you choose to approve these changes, as we did with Amendment 1. So if there are no more questions, I'll give it to you.
So we taking these as a block or one at a time since we
It is.
edited them?
It is your choice, however you
How would you
choose
like
to
to
do
do
it.
I think there's 2 issues there.
2 issues.
One is to expand the board with interested parties, and the second has to do with just the makeup of the executive committee.
So 2 separate actions.
Yeah, too quickly. In the first, I'm prepared to,
If you're ready, go.
yeah, to so move on allowance of additional members by petition. I think this is highly beneficial to our whole group.
But you might want to add like a whole lot.
To be approved by
The
the
board.
board.
All right, motion
Second.
seconded. Any further discussion or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, that one is done. And then the do you want to take a crack at the executive committee motion? You want me to suggest some language?
Put it back up.
Sure.
So I move that we establish terms for the executive committee, the term being 2 years with possible 3 extensions of that term.
2 extensions.
2 extensions, sorry. 2. And I guess we could roll in, do we need to then say anything about the fact that the officers can follow that, saying,
Yeah, I think we just add in revision and length of time. An officer can consecutively serve suffices as presented or as discussed today.
so I so move?
Second. Okay, any further discussion or comment?
Just want to make sure we got this right.
Yeah,
We're doing 2 years maximum of an additional 2,
right,
and that the officer would match that maximum amount.
Correct.
Additional 2 terms. not 2 terms.
Thank you.
So you could be there for as many as 6 years.
Got it.
And if you happen to get nominated in year 1, you can conceivably be an executive, but officer person.
Just want to make sure everyone's okay.
all right, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right. And there's the bylaws. And then, any other items there before we go to the nominating?
Just a note that we have had petitions, to join.
So we'll handle that. We'll do the executive committee appointments and then we do have three petitions to join the partnership that we can consider today. And take action on, but we'll handle the executive committee and the nominating committee first.
Right. I polled all of the executive committee and several members. Being diplomatic, I asked if anyone else besides myself was willing to step down from the executive committee to start getting some fresh faces, fresh ideas on the executive board. I have been on since day 1, which is 30 years. I don't know how long we've had this. And I had let my colleagues on the executive committee know that last winter that I intend to be one of the people rotating. I feel strongly that it's time for some fresh ideas. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a great group of people. I would like to stay as a board member. So I shall be stepping down basically at the end of this meeting if all goes good. We have, by definition, roles for the various executive. And so I am very pleased to say that William Park has agreed to take my role as private sector representative on the executive committee. With my promise that if we can't make it, I'll be myself. So Margaret, who represents rural.
Yes.
Graciously said she would step down because she agreed in principle that it's good to have the churn. In practice, she loved being on it and particularly eager, but felt that Kim Highland, who has stepped in previously when Margaret's been unavailable, would be excellent in her place. And so Margaret will step down, and if we work out the logistics that we're about to deal with, Kim Highland has agreed to take Margaret's seat on the executive committee, with Margaret being this if she's unavailable to do so. And with that, Kim, I thank you for doing that. Kim has been very, very helpful. I felt every time she has come in. So, other side of the region, but still very engaged in the issues. In the rural setting, which is what that position. So that's 2 of 7 of us. There's one other member I couldn't even reach because she is totally overwhelmed and there's the potential when we do finally hear from her that she might step back to just being a board member 2, which would open another position, which my goal was to find 2 to 3 of the 7. And then to try to have at least a third of us roll off every 2 years. To keep the precious and do that level of churn. So the issue that we alluded to is that Kim is an alternate. She's not a member yet, but she's one of the ones that we're about to address to petition to become a new board member. And if she becomes a new board member through that action, which I highly support, then she can simply accept the role of an executive committee. That's not too good. I don't know what actions need to be when, other than just to let you know, Greg and Margaret are stepping back, and William and hopefully Kim will step forward.
So I think we need to take a motion as a group to appoint Mr. Park in this island to, well.
You can't do that first.
We'll do the petition, but
Okay.
this island role. But once we appoint, assuming we accept Ms. Highland's petition to join the full group, then we can make a motion to appoint both those individuals to the executive committee. And proceed from there. We do have others who are petitioning to join. So in addition to Kim Highland, you want to go through those, Ruth, or should I? We have 4 total, right?
Yeah, we have Dave Norris and Luis Oyola, I believe.
So define the roles, or are these individuals?
Ruth, can you speak up a little bit? Oh, I'm sorry. The AC is loud. So I've had a number of people who have requested over the past 2 years to join the RHP. Folks who have reached out either directly to me or to folks on the executive committee. Folks who have asked to join include Dave Norris of the Carr Foundation, Luis Oyola of the Community Land Trust, John Sales from CRHA, and Kim Highland from Fluvanna Louisa Housing Foundation.
And perhaps, Dave, do you want to just go, because the foundation's kind of new to all of us. Thank you for coming today. Can you just give us like a quick overview of that foundation? And
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, the Carr Foundation was established by Carr, the Charlotte Area Association of Realtors, to engage the resources of the realtor community here in our region to address affordable housing issues. And so through funding and advocacy and awareness raising and volunteer engagement. So happy to be here, whether or not I end up on the commission or not. I'll still be attending the meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Luis, any words for the petition? I mean, it makes sense why the community land trust should be.
I mean, I'm going to explain a little more for anyone unfamiliar with the community land trust, but I mean, we serve the same region as the planning district. I work a lot with the planning district staff, so happy to do it.
And then and John at the CRHA makes is any words to that? Because I know he's not coming today.
Yeah, he's not present today. They have asked repeatedly over the past couple of years to join because of their work in affordable housing in the region. They partner with us on a variety of projects. So I think it makes a lot of sense to mention this one.
For those who don't know, he's executive director.
Yes, he is the executive director, and I would suspect that it'll probably be Kathleen Glenn Matthews, his deputy, who will end up attending. And I believe she's online today, yeah.
So very good.
So are we appointing these organizations, representatives from these organizations? Or are we appointing individuals? Because most of us are here representing a segment of an organization.
Well, that's a good question, you know, whether we discussed that. I think relative to the CRHA, I don't know that the Carr Foundation has more than one employee there.
We have a very active board, legislators, our current board chair, so he could be an alternate, or Michael Guthrie, who's our vice chair.
So I think maybe it makes sense to do the organizations.
I do, amongst other things, if one of these four individuals changes roles and there's no longer executive director or whatever, then it's an easy matter to have someone, the successor step in to the board. So I think
From the very beginning, it was always organization.
So, that's the question.
Yeah.
So we're, those of us who represent, I think, organizations, but we're listed as nonprofit health representatives. And so there's a question that's relevant to this conversation, but am I that representative or am I a representative of the nonprofit housing community? Because that's germane for the conversation today, obviously.
Well, maybe something we need to discuss further. I mean, the original intent, Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, was to make sure the four pillars were covered, and the nonprofit reps, those categories were kind of aligned to those four pillars. Public official, nonprofit, for-profit, and citizens. We're kind of growing in a way that's making it seem like, well, there might be an individual that makes sense to appoint an individual, but not be confined to just having one or two people from a segment or an area. So, I mean, I think it's something we'll have to deal with as the petitions come on. It doesn't seem to be very conflicted right now to go ahead and appoint these organizations. And then if we have somebody that's petitioning as an individual, we can maybe address that at the time of appointment.
Well, I guess the only thing that's germane, so let's say SAS stepped down, let's say I stepped down, with somebody from Habitat immediately, if we're appointing them as representatives of the organization, we're appointing the organization and not the individual. And I just like clarity.
So Habitat fits underneath the nonprofit.
But Habitat has a seat. PHA has a seat. Right. So this nomenclature here, appointed nonprofit housing representative, probably should be changed to Habitat or to PHA or something. Or just so, again, I'm not, first of all, I'm fully supportive and enthusiastically supportive of membership for these four folks. I'm just trying to figure out how going forward, we have clarity about whether we're appointing that person or an organization.
A way around that might be putting them underneath the pillar, right? So Habitat's under the nonprofit. And until Luis joins, I was kind of loosely representing the interest of the chair. He will represent that on me because my role is really is representing the commission. It's my role here on that end of it, which, so I just think if you want to change those names, we just make sure they're underneath the pillars. And that's it.
Why don't we appoint the organizations today, because this is the first time this conversation has come up. And then we'll task this to the executive committee to clean it up. And then we'll formalize it and have a suggestion of how we do this moving forward by the next quarterly.
Again, I'm fully supportive of the people organization, but I would like to suggest because going forward, I'm not sure that it's great practice to have a public meeting where members are asked to make a vote where people have been just introduced to them today. And I say that, again, fully supportive of people today, but in the past, organizations I've been with, there are requirements to readings because some people come on, you typically want to do a check of some sort, a Google search. In the past, for an organization that I've been part of.
I'm going to push back on that. All these people we all know well. So this isn't folks that we don't know well. And in order, what you're saying is we gotta have to wait another quarter.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying.
My hearing aids maybe not working.
No, you're hearing the words I'm saying, you're not hearing the intent. The intent is that is that there should be some form of vetting process so that we're not here on the public dais saying, well, you know, actually I've heard that this person juggles cats or something like that. So that there needs to be some sort of process where people could be introduced and then members can have some way of, there needs to be some way of vetting either privately or an executive committee closed session or something like that. And I'm not suggesting, because we only meet once a quarter, I'm not suggesting 2 readings of the full board, but I would suggest that we throw this to the executive committee to come up with some process that doesn't put us in a situation where we're being asked to vote on people who are introduced to us on the diets. I think that's bad practice.
I would agree with Dan. I guess my request is maybe a little bit simpler than his, that we at least get in advance with the materials for the meeting, the bios for these individuals and a description of the organization they're representing.
Yeah, sure, that's something.
Because do we work in this space all the time, we know all these people, but all of us don't necessarily know.
How often does our nominating committee meet?
The nominating committee?
Yeah.
Well, the nominating committee is specific to the officers, so that's just been driven by the terms.
So we haven't had, in the past, we haven't had a process of onboarding new.
Correct. This is the whole
We got
point.
stuck on 21.
The change, the strategic plan that we went through, the executive committee and that plan theorized, do we want to grow the partnership or not? Is a way to get more participation in the group. And then that also rolled into the conversation about the chairman on the executive committee. So this is the first time outside of the initial 21 that we're even considered expanding it.
I think we have some general governance. I mean, I don't think there's no emergency or burning platform here, but I think we've got some general governance issues we probably need to. If we want this to be a normal thing where and I'm in favor of that, of opening this up to more stakeholders, to more people, to more voices, to more diversity. There probably should be some sort of regular process by which people apply, they're vetted, and then they're brought forward. And so whether that's, you know, some organizations do it once a year, they seek new people. Some people see people as they come forward. We haven't had a process at all, so Ruth has been in the unenviable position of having to say, we don't really have a process for that, right? But I would suggest that the executive committee come up with a process for this, and that we do it in a little bit more orderly than haphazard way, because ultimately, you know, the question of equity, fairness, and that's a public body. We don't want to put ourselves we want to create exposure where we turn somebody down for no real reason. And we approve other people for other reasons. So I think we have a number of things to figure out on the governance side, like are we appointing organizations or parts of the pillar. We're appointing 4 more people who represent the nonprofit sector. We're 3 so now that pillar has grown. I'm favorite, that's my favorite pillar. But we're making governance decisions kind of on the fly right now. And it probably wants to be a little bit more thoughtful, mindfully thought of by the executive committee. And then I'm in favor of acting quickly after that, once we have a process.
I'm just glad somebody outside of government is asking for a longer process. To take more time.
What is a long process to figure out the process? And then that's a person be able to.
So I see a lot of nodding heads, which leads me to believe there's no objection that this can get tasked to the executive committee. We can put it on the work list and come forward with the recommendation of all of this. So I think, again, this is not, the organization versus individual probably should have been thought of, but we just didn't think about
But
it.
from the process where we are now, then that makes Kim not able to join the executive committee.
Well, I think today we're going to approve,
No one's saying we can't,
we're gonna not put the process on hold. There's no objection to these 4 members coming on board today. So we're going to take that, well, I'm suggesting we go ahead and take that action. It rolled out of Congress. This isn't the first conversation on expanding and agreeing to having new people come on. That has been discussed at the executive committee level. Dave's name specifically was discussed at the executive committee. I know that the Community Land Trust as an organization was discussed. So it's not that there wasn't some discussion at that, to Dan's point. So I think we're fine going ahead and accepting them on, but we'll clean it up so that as we're moving forward, that we have a way that says to people now that we are allowing or growing the organization in some ways. So let's figure that out. I think the executive committee can. Any objection or any other comments or notes on it? So what we need to do now is just take a vote on accepting the 4 individuals to four groups to the represented by the 4 named individuals to the partnership today.
So
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so that brings Kim, Dave, Luis, and John representing the rural nonprofit representative for Kim Highland. Car Foundation as what category is the Car Foundation called, or nonprofit? Same with Luis and same with John. All right, and then if somebody get ready to say something. Then we need, there is Greg, we want to make I'll look to you, because you were suggesting changes to the executive committee.
Yes, I move that we accept Kim Highland and William Park as new members of the executive committee under the terms we've just approved, replacing Greg Powell and I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Great. All right, thank you. And we have some cleanup tasks. That will take us to item number 5, new business, and we have some folks visiting with us today to give us some information on the work of what's going on. The first one is item A, the local rental eviction landscape, and Elizabeth Stark. It's going to be doing that presentation. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm gonna steal this pen because I can't. I'll put it back. Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Stark. I am the eviction prevention case manager at Piedmont Housing Alliance. I wear a few hats in the community though, and I've been a long time eviction prevention advocate. I've bothered a lot of you at meetings about my work. So thank you for having me here, and I'm really excited to be sharing with you today. So why are so many tenants in our area facing affordability issues and evictions? I know that you all know very well about the affordability issues taking place in our region. But for renters, renting is incredibly expensive. The median rent in the Charlottesville region right now is $2,100. These are market rate rents, and these are the rents that many low-income families are paying, because if you don't have access to a housing choice voucher, if you don't have access to any kind of, a housing, income-based housing, you're in the market, you're in the, market rate rent, and, it can be crippling for low-income families. We know affordable housing supply is limited. And then another thing is that tenants who, if you are low income, you might have faced some difficulties in the past. You might have perhaps, some debt collectors on your record. You might have a previous eviction on your record. You might have a criminal record. So when landlords go to do background checks, all of these things make it very difficult to get into, affordable housing, and it really limits which landlords will take these tenants that are considered to be, high risk. So it can be very hard, and these tenants can be funneled into very specific properties that sort of tend to take some of these more risky tenants. And tenants are living, as we know, many Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And when you are, you're on that knife's edge, you're one crisis away from a financial disaster. And then once you do have that disaster, you miss your rent one time and the fees start to snowball. So I have a little case study, a young single mother that I worked with. She missed work due to an illness. She actually was lucky enough to actually have paid sick leave, but many folks don't. They miss work for 2 weeks. Maybe they get COVID, maybe they get sick, then their child gets sick. So they have this long stretch where they're missing work and they might lose their job over that. I have tenants that call me every week that are experiencing that very situation, just something completely sort of normal, right? That's not even really what we might consider a crisis. And then they find themselves in trouble. So you might miss work due to illness, you miss rent. Then I'm going to outline how the eviction process triggers an additional $467 in fees just in 1 month alone as the tenant navigates this process. So, you know, her rent and utility fees for a 2-bedroom were $1,824. As soon as she hits day 6 of the month and hasn't paid, she gets hit with that late fee, which is 10%. So many tenants that are low income are paying this late fee as part of their rent. It's just built in. They pay it every month because, you know, in my work, we get tenants, we get a lot of financial data on tenants. So I see their bank accounts, I see their ledgers in detail. And so I can just see many tenants are just paying this late fee as an automatic part of their rent. So they're always paying that 10% extra. And then the eviction and legal fees add $278. And I have to say this, there's real variation in how much legal fees landlords charge. And sometimes it can be as much as $400 or $500 for just one case. So this brings the total rental arrears and legal fees needed to prevent the eviction. That's the amount they have to pay to stay in their home to $2,291. And, you know, the other thing is this process has stretched out. Guess what? You know, oh, July 1st, coming right around the corner. Then they also have to turn around and pay that next month's rent. So you can really see how one little slip kind of leads to this, you know, this difficulty that can, for many tenants, just become insurmountable. And I have a little bit about understanding serial evictions. Eviction Lab says, while some landlords do file intending to remove tenants, others use eviction filings as a way to collect rent and additional fees. That results in the phenomenon of serial evictions. Charlottesville area tenants are experiencing these serial evictions. Anecdotally, I can tell you as an anti-eviction advocate, I know the docket very well. I recognize the names on the docket. And, you know, between a half and a third of the tenants that are facing eviction have already faced eviction. So it's something that's happening to folks over and over and over. And I'm going to share a little bit in a second about who the biggest serial evictors in our region are. And I just thought this statistic really jumped out to me. Between June 1st, 2023 and June 1st, 2024, 8.8% of Albemarle County renters experienced eviction filings. So that's almost 10% of county residents. And this is just that graphic from Eviction Lab. And I want to say something very briefly why I'm focusing on Albemarle County. Charlottesville has about half the number of evictions as Albemarle County, but those evictions are happening under very different circumstances than in Albemarle County, and all of the biggest evictors and all of the serial evictors are in the county. So these are the top evictors in Albemarle County. You can see them: Sparks, Charlottesville, Barracks West, Cobalt Ridge, formerly Abingdon Crossing, Cavalier Crossing, and Brookdale. And, you know, so these are also some of the biggest complexes as well, but most of these, the rent is not more affordable there. It's market rate. It's like 1,800, 2,000 in that area. And so these are who we see in court day in, day out. And then, sorry, I had a little trouble with the Eviction Lab site when I was putting my presentation together. But the serial evictors, their top rankings are Spark, Barracks West, Cobalt Ridge, Cavalier Crossing, and then Westgate Barclay Place. So just for reference. What can we do to prevent evictions? Fund increased rental assistance. As we've said, as I've said, these tenants are experiencing this small hiccup, and many of them sort of start to get buried underneath the financial weight of it. So rapid, unrestricted rental funding, rent relief funding can really help them, because the longer it takes, again, the more those fees accrue and the more the cycle kind of weighs them down. During COVID, we were so glad to see Albemarle County funding rent relief at 2.1 million. But it now is only funding it at 260,000. The city of Charlottesville funds rent relief at 1 million, and they have about half as many evictions as the county. In addition, I would just say that this lack of funding in the county does put so much pressure on all the other agencies that were there as the backup, as the second line of defense. And so there's just whole agencies that used to be there for tenants who maybe had used all the aid or other things, and now they're out of money and they just don't have any hope of getting money. And we're all kind of like, do you have money? Who has money? It's a real scramble. So another thing is funding increased right to counsel. Tenants who are represented by lawyers have better outcomes. It's not a panacea though, because they still owe the money. Lawyers can't necessarily make that go away. We also need increased legal aid capacity though too. That's a big issue. But that it does help tenants, and it can give them the time they need to find those funds to stay housed. And then another possibility is incentive for landlords to rent to tenants with poor credits or criminal history, sort of like a landlord insurance fund that takes away some of that financial riskiness in taking on a less financially secure tenant. The Virginia Eviction Reduction Pilot at PHA. So that's my program. It's in its 4th year. It's a statewide program focusing on areas throughout the state that have, high eviction rates. We have significant funding for rental assistance. We can offer up to $3,000 per year to tenants. But our process is slow. We have a lot of paperwork we need and information that the tenants have to get to us. So it doesn't move as quickly as some of the other programs, especially with the city and county rent relief programs. But we can also help with utility payments as well. One of the big things is we can help with car insurance, car loan payments, and car repairs, which are essential for keeping tenants in work and so that they don't lose work. The program is available to tenants below 80% AMI, but they also have to meet specific eligibility requirements that are coming to us from the Princeton Eviction Lab that are kind of these key factors in vulnerability to eviction. So they do have to meet some eligibility criteria. And then our program specifically here through PHA at the Financial Opportunity Center, we also use it as an opportunity to work with tenants. They work with our counselors to create a budget and a spending and saving plan, a plan to have that emergency funding on hand so that they don't get into the same situation, hopefully again. And then we also can connect them with financial coaches, down payment loan assistance, coaches that can help them improve their credit. So we're really trying not just to help in the immediate term, but kind of give them a chance, a leg up to get into a better place financially. And I was pretty short and sweet. I know you have had a lot going on today, so I didn't want to take too much time. But I do have a little time for any questions. Is that okay? And then I also have my contact info. I can give you a card if you'd like. But if you have any questions or referrals, or you work with folks facing eviction or going through the eviction court process, I'm something of an expert and I can help tenants and know what to do. I'm as expert as you can be without actually being a lawyer. So I'm happy to help anyone that calls me with that process. Yes.
So is there any consequence for landlords who are frequent flyers in the serial eviction process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in some localities, they've looked at the idea, in Virginia, they can pass that right on to tenants. So the tenants bear the burden of the serial evictions. But in other states, landlords have to pay those fees, or they're higher a little bit to kind of make it something that's like, could you have called this tenant and worked out a payment plan? Could you have come to an arrangement that didn't have to be so punitive and so devastating for the tenant? So there are other options, but in Virginia, it's a very landlord-friendly state, as it is.
What incentives do you recommend for people to lease to others that have maybe poor credit history or they have criminal history? And then a follow-up question. For criminal history, what do you determine is how, as far as criminal history, at what point is the history so bad that you should not lease to them?
Yeah, so we don't, I don't really help people with the leasing part of things, so that's a little bit outside my realm. But I think, it's definitely risky, and that's where something like, or it can feel risky to landlords to take that chance on someone who might not be as financially stable. And that's where maybe these incentives could come in. We have the same problem though. We have a similar problem with housing vouchers, where we have more housing vouchers largely than we can connect tenants to actual properties and landlords that are willing to accept those vouchers. So I think that we really need a systemic approach to all of the above, because I don't know the solution, unfortunately, but I know the problem, which is that we have so many community members that we're unable to house, and everyone needs a home. So it is a difficult problem. Yes.
So I don't think we ever actually formally adopted in the city, but we generated something that originally was called the Landlord Risk Reduction Program. Stacy was the spearheaded that, and there were incentives baked in primarily for folks accepting vouchers, but also this could be expanded to folks with higher credit risks. And it did things like backstopped damage, it backstopped security deposits. It actually filled in for security deposits so that low-income folks wouldn't have to put as much cash forward. Michael and Boyd, did we ever actually adopt that in the city? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
That is probably something that you guys would be willing to throw that back over the fence to the Housing Advisory Committee. We could study it again and maybe work with it and bring it forward, bring a proposal forward again. It costs money, but it's actually more actuarial type money, because you don't end up, you have to reserve for it a little bit, but you don't have to reserve the full amount for it. And so it's actually, when we look at the math, it seemed like it would work as a proposal, you get pretty good bang for the buck for the city to invest in.
If I can add a little bit to that last part that Dan was talking about, the idea behind the Landlord Risk Reduction Fund is that there is money available in case something happens. So there's generally no upfront payments to the landlord. An agreement is signed that the landlord would forgo collecting a security deposit in exchange for understanding that should there be some sort of extensive above normal wear and tear damage, or something should happen through that tenancy, that they would be able to come back and access that fund. So in many cases, they were often started years ago for dealing with trying to move people from the streets into housing. And what has been found over the years is that these funds often go unused, but it acts as a security blanket situation.
Yeah, that would be incredibly helpful, both for, as you know, folks moving from homelessness to being housed. We, you know, as you know, our homeless services folks have done incredible job moving people into housing, so that would be great on all fronts.
In terms of the money, pools of money that you're pulling from in order to get, people up to date on rent and, as well as the court fees. Is that money allocated by Charlottesville and Albemarle County, your biggest source of funds?
For my program, it's allocated by the state
Okay.
for the eviction reduction pilot, although maybe Lori Jean could, that's correct, right?
Yeah, and just to know, if you don't mind me adding another throw in your additional knowledge about this, but the funding that we were given for the entire year for renting every year was used as like in 4 months.
Yeah.
And what was the total amount?
Around that, I can be the exact number.
Yeah, but ballpark, like 100,000.
Yeah, I think what was allocated specifically to rental arrears might have been like 60.
We keep moving more into.
Yeah, and we keep moving, we keep like pulling stuff out of other funds to cover it because the need is so great. And then we just got some additional funding coming through, so enough that we should be able to be solvent through the end of the year.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the first line, and then you would refer people to the Pathways program in the city.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, again, I have to say, if someone lives in the city and they're having their first financial crisis, it's very easy. I refer them to the city, they get the funding right away. It's a very simple process. But in the county, you know, it's been slowly kind of coming down. And so now I think the amount that's available might be 400 or 500. And if you owe 2,000 or 3,000 and it's piling up, you know, and as I said, again, that snowball effect is just always there. Coming, more fees, more fees. It's very hard for them to get on top of that without using other services. And that's where the whole network is kind of depleted because of the stress that that's causing.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about 120,000 from the state and then about 1.2 million from Charlottesville and Albemarle together. It just really sticks out that what we do in Charlottesville and Albemarle will make a very big difference on outcomes in terms of numbers.
Huge difference. And it's also about how quickly folks can get that money. Because, you know, again, it's like the quicker they can get it, the more relief they can feel. And the quicker they can get back on their feet and recover from whatever crisis they've been experiencing.
And final question, anecdotally, the past couple of years, we've heard a lot of developers who bought either low-income housing tax credit properties whose affordability period is going to end in a couple of years, or older, naturally affordable housing, and then they pursue aggressive eviction in order to get people out so they can redevelop at triple rents, that kind of thing. Is that a significant amount of the kind of cases you see, or is it more these are just larger landlords that are, as a practice, just aggressively evicting people, but they're not preparing for like
it's mostly just aggressive eviction just to get the money. Although I believe Cavalier Crossing was recently sold, I've heard, or not sold, but they're going to renovate and do, you know, they want to make luxury student housing. And so I don't know off the top of my head how big that development is, but it was on our list of, serial evictors. And they actually rent by the room. So you can just live in a room, you can live in an apartment with 2 other people that you've never met before. It's like they leave a note that says, you're getting a new roommate. And so that's been, a very affordable option for community members they're not renewing leases now. And so for the next year, we're going to be experiencing the housing crunch that the lack of those units is going to cause.
There are a lot of people with disabilities living in Cavalier Crossing, so it's a real loss that they're converting at. The other thing I wanted to add was when the homeless service providers presented to City Council recently, it was really an interesting presentation. It was one of the 4 p.m. meetings, I think maybe the most recent one. And one of them does a screening asking whether the person was local when they lost their housing, their most recent place to live. And I think they said it was 60% local. So really the number of homeless people that we're seeing in the community and the increasing impact they're mostly folks who've been evicted and don't have a place to go. I think there's a lot of rumors to the contrary, but that was pretty shocking to me. The other thing I was interested in with what you were talking about with the amount of assistance that comes through, because so many folks are paying rent that's around $2,000. Are you seeing a lot of people who get the 1,000 from Pathways, or if they're in the county, the handful there, and can't make it work, and so ultimately end up getting displaced?
Absolutely. I mean, I have tenants every day that are, were able to pay 400 or 500 out of their own, they scrape some money together, but it's just not quite enough. And then because, I mean, it is a limitation of the city because they're only allocating 1,000 per month. And no one's rent is 1,000, it's 2,000. So we really need, I think, even though it would deplete the fund more quickly, I do think it would be better to have enough available to take care of the need in the and the crisis, and then maybe they don't have access to those funds later on. But it's definitely an issue that I have with tenants, of trying to figure out how we're going to cobble together what they need to pay. I mean, every time I have to write a $3,000 check, I mean, I don't write it, but I ask for the money to a tenant. I mean, it's a huge blow to our fund too, because it does deplete it so quickly. But the options, there just aren't great options. There aren't family shelters, even once people get evicted. So it can be very dire if folks have kids. We really don't have anywhere for them to go if they lose their housing.
Other questions?
Not a question, just to add to the conversation, and I really appreciate this, it's great information, and I like the idea that it's very local discussion. I will add though that there was a really good article in the Richmond Times-Dispatch last weekend about this very issue, talking about, now, it wasn't locally, it was a statewide thing, but it was a really good article. I would encourage folks to take a look at it.
Oh, I'll definitely look that up. I'm glad to hear about that. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I took a vacation a couple of weeks ago and I was telling my clients, they're like, you gotta go. So I have really supportive clients too. But thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it. Ruth has my contact information. Please feel free to reach out if you ever want to talk about it more. I'm always happy to get coffee or talk further about, I'm here to advocate for my clients. So I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Right, the next one, we have the Piedmont Community Land Trust overview, and we have Luis Oello, to give that presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Luis Oyola. I'm the Executive Director of the Piedmont Community Land Trust. Thank you for having me, and thank you for hosting me and making some time to learn more about what we're up to. First off, I will explain a little bit about the land trust, but just to gauge from the room, how many people have at least heard of a community land trust before? All right, that's pretty good, and that makes sense. How many people, if you were asked what is a community land trust, you would feel comfortable answering that? Okay, about half. That's still pretty good. So for those who need a refresher or this is new, relatively, a community land trust is just another. It's a different way of doing home buying and a different way of owning land. And when a resident buys a community land trust home, they buy the home, they get title to it, they can pass it on just like they would any other property. But the land is owned by the community land trust and they lease the land from the community land trust. They pay a small monthly fee. In our case, that's $25 a month. And then the land trust retains permanent ownership of the land through a 90-year renewable ground lease. Now, the ownership of the land in and of itself makes a housing more affordable. So in this graph, for the same home, that is worth a total of 250,000. The land trust investment in the land of 50,000 lowers the price for the homeowner by 50,000, which can, depending on interest, sometimes but in this scenario, even with adding the ground lease, is a $200 difference in mortgage payment. Now that's in and of itself, good. It makes housing more affordable. But the main reason is to make housing permanently affordable. So the ownership of the land and the ground lease is a key mechanism for the land trust to ensure that the properties that are within the land trust remain affordable in perpetuity, regardless of how much it resells over time. I'm sure everyone has seen here the overall pattern, especially within the past roughly 5 years, of homes easily doubling in price within a very short amount of time. This is what the land trust is trying to hone in on. So once a resident buys land trust homes, they can sell the home. They retain the equity from paying off the mortgage and a portion of the appreciation, which I'll get into, and the land trust retains the land. And so the new resident, they become the new homeowner, and they then become the new, they come into a new ground lease with the same requirements. This is actually out of order. So to explain how the ground lease ends up preserving affordability, this is an example of an actual resale that happened within the land trust. This is from one of our Nassau Street homes in the Belmont neighborhood. When the house was originally sold by the land trust in 2019, the appraised value was 300,000, meaning that if it were sold in the market, it would have been that minimum. But through the subsidy that the land trust put in, it was sold at 215, already an $85,000 difference from the market. 3 years later, when this homeowner found a new job and they needed to move out of Charlottesville, the appraised value then was $400,000, and the new sales price was $240,000. So I think the thing to know in particular is that the first time around, the difference was $85,000. The second time around, the difference was $160,000 from the market. So it is that much more affordable than what's in the market. How we arrived at the 240 is our resale formula. So we take the original sales price whenever it was first sold, which is 215, and then that difference between the original appraised value and the new appraised value, we take 25% of that and add it to the original sales price. So in this case, the difference was $100,000, 25%, easy math, is $25,000, and we added that to the original sales price. So what we're trying to get at here is landing on some sort of balance between low-income homeowner gets to build equity and build wealth from the increased appreciation, but it doesn't go so far that it prevents the next low-income home buyer from being able to buy that home. It's
sure I understand the equity that the seller took away was
$25,000 plus what they had from the down payment and from paying off the mortgage. In this case, that was a total of $35,000, which they then put towards a larger market rate home. So in the case of this family, it was actually the wealth they built what helped them step up, so to speak, in the market. So to run through some of the projects, the land trust has a variety of ways of building homes and building a portfolio. On the top left is this is homes in Cleveland Avenue here in town. These were developed by Habitat, but the land is owned by the land trust. So the homeowners are able to benefit from the programs that Habitat offers to be able to afford a very affordable home. But it's also remains affordable in perpetuity through the ownership of the land by the land trust. In the top middle is, this is in 6.5 Street in Belmont. This home is an example of the land trust acquiring an existing home, doing some repairs, and then selling it at an affordable price and keeping it affordable. On the top right is an example of the community land trust sort of running the development of a home. These are 4 duplexes in Nassau Street. And these are the ones that were in the example that were sold for $215. But one of the particular things about these is that these are net zero homes. So on top of being sold at an affordable price, the homeowners for these average a yearly utility bill of about $15, which is another way to keep housing affordable.
Might want to add a little bit on the White House.
Yeah, we just got recognition from the White House for being somewhat one of the few affordable housing Pearl certification projects in the nation. And then in the bottom right is an example of us partnering with a developer who builds a development and then sets apart a portion of the development for the community land trust. In this case, this is Stanley Martin in Spring Hill, where they worked with the Albemarle County government to take advantage of their incentives and also have some subsidy for the land trust to be able to purchase the land and put some subsidy into the home and make them affordable. These homes sold for about 220, the ones that the land trust own. And now they are, the market value, they're probably between 350, 400,000. Yeah, 385, yeah. Some current development. So this this is a key piece of our partnership with Piedmont Housing Alliance, which I'll get into. A person who had bought 5 vacant homes on the top of Prospect Avenue in Fiveville, he was going to repair them. He didn't have the money for it. He approached PHA saying, hey, I can sell these to you below market rate if you can ensure that this will remain affordable homeownership opportunities in the future. So PHA entered into a formal partnership with the land trust at that time, because the land trust was the mechanism to preserve that affordability. And so as these homes have been getting rehabilitated and resold, and sold by PHA, the land trust enters into ownership of the land. The home buyer owns the home, and they enter into the ground lease with the land trust. These homes in particular, both PHA and the land trust made a goal to sell it to not just households making below 50% AMI, but households making below 50% AMI who lived in Fiveville already, with a goal of preventing displacement. And we have sold 4 homes so far. We're currently looking for home buyer on the 5th one. And all 4 of them have gone to Fiveville families making less than 50% AMI, as we've been able to get enough subsidy from a whole mixture of subsidy sources, from the Charlottesville Affordable Housing Fund to the Virginia Housing Trust Fund, home with TJPDC, New Market Tax Credit, Housing Innovations and Energy Efficiency, sort of stack them all up to reach that level of affordability. And so all 4 of them are Black households from the neighborhood, and actually 3 of them moved from across the street in Greenstone. So this is one that's particularly inspiring in terms of how the land trust can open up these sorts of opportunities for the community. Another current development is 2 homes that the land trust acquired in Lake Monticello, these are 2 first homes in Fluvanna County and in a rural jurisdiction. This is a case of us, and when I say us, it was Keith, spotting 2 good deals, 2 worthwhile opportunities for acquisition. And how we made the finances work is that the land trust got a subsidy grant from NeighborWorks, where it's a very flexible subsidy, $400,000, and we're able to use that pot of money to be able to offer cash for these homes, which makes it a lot easier to close quickly. And then we put some repairs into both homes and put the subsidy for the land and to make it affordable, and then put it back on the market again at an affordable price and permanently affordable. So the one on the bottom right, we sold it, closed in April, sold for $215. The one on the top right, we replaced the roof and the flooring, so we're selling it at a higher price at $250. We literally just listed it this Monday. Future developments. So one of the big ones is literally will be the biggest one for the land trust, is Renaissance Ridge in Nelson County off of 151. This is part of a partnership with Nelson County Community Development Foundation and Greenwood Homes, with Stu Armstrong, for those who know him, leading a lot of the project. And it's going to be a mix of market rate, workforce, and low-income homes. And it's going to have detached single-family, townhomes, stacked on garden apartments, and cottages. Particularly those last two, we are working to make those at affordable sales price and then keep them affordable. Because the townhomes are stacked on the apartments, this will be the first time that the land trust forays into condos. And as far as I can tell, these would be the first deed restricted condos in Virginia. So it's an exciting way for us to see how we can play with density to reach further affordability and then preserve that affordability through deed restrictions. Finally, but very importantly, just down two blocks from here, there will be townhomes for home ownership in the future phases of Kindlewood. So in the second phase, in this entry point from Monticello Avenue, this lot right here is going to have 4 townhomes, a row of 4 townhomes. We're currently seeking development partner, but we're looking to build it as phase 2 get the rental units in phase 2 get built. And we're working similarly with the advisory committee on design and guiding the project, just as they have for the whole rest of the neighborhood. Phases 3 and 4 will have an estimated 15 to 16 townhome units. So this will be the first time that there will be home ownership in that neighborhood, since it was originally torn down to build Friendship Court. And so it's another really exciting opportunity. Just like in Fikeville, we'll be prioritizing selling to Kindlewood residents. And as of this spring, I'm working with residents to get them ready for home purchasing now. And I'll just very quickly go back to our partnership with Piedmont Housing Alliance. So I am officially a staff person from PHA, which can cause confusion, but that's a result of our formal partnership with PHA. So I am PHA staff, but I act as the executive director of the Community Land Trust. So this can help leverage the expertise and sort of the strengths of each respective organization. And a quick breakdown of our properties. Our portfolio is 40 properties, 17 in Charlesville, 21 in Albemarle, and like I said, 2 in Fluvanna. I did a quick run of numbers just because I know Black homeownership has been a very important issue to touch on in this area. And roughly a third of our homeowners exactly 32% are Black. Which is above the proportion of the Black population in the region. And our AMI roughly, so it's kind of hard to estimate because we're going back to what the AMI was when they closed, but it's roughly 60 to 70% AMI. Probably it's going to dip below 60% once we finish closing on the prospect homes. So that's some quick data, and I think that's it. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Russ.
So with this split, so the land trust owns the land, homeowner owns the home. How are property taxes divided?
I'm glad you asked. This is the right group to ask that question too. So the homeowner is fully responsible for the property tax on the whole property. However, to balance that out, there is state law in Virginia that requires tax assessors to assess community land trust homes at a lower rate than at the market. So that is, I made a quick list of sort of different policy nuggets for this group to think through, and taxes is another one because localities set the actual tax rates, and there's a lot of opportunity to benefit homeowners and also just understand that, you know, the market value, the owner will never realize that market value, and so therefore they should be taxed at a lower rate. And then, but so, does that answer your question first up? Yeah. But some other quick things, you know, there's still a lot of need to understand shared equity. Community land trust is just one form of shared equity. Shared equity is really important to tackle affordable housing and increase appreciation. So there's a lot of need for government officials to understand it, developers to understand it, and the general public to understand it. And y'all are in the right positions to help with that. I'm here. This is my job to teach people. And then capital and subsidy. This will always be a challenge, but there's a lot of growing interest in community land trust. A lot of in my inbox, in Keith's inbox, and Sunshine's inbox, we get a pretty consistent stream of people wanting to sell to us because they know why we're there. They understand our mission. But we need the capital to be able to move forward with those opportunities. And then the subsidy to be able to actually lower the sales price to something that's affordable. And finally, like the localities have a lot of control in programs. So I know Albemarle, y'all just had in their administrative plan, the voucher to homeownership program. That's huge for the community land trust and in making homes affordable in general for any affordable housing, but for the community land trust in particular, where we're trying to go further in affordability. Voucher to homeownership programs are important. Every locality can implement it, HUD allows it, but the locality has to decide that they're going to do it. I know CRHA has something in the works too. Yeah. And then, like I said, Texas and land bank. So Charlottesville is very close to establishing a land bank, but every locality has to establish a land bank in order for that to work. And that's a really key way to move land to keep land or properties that become taxable income from simply going to the highest bidder, and rather give localities an opportunity to decide, no, this will go to affordable housing. And then finally, the 6-letter word zoning, especially in regions outside of Charlottesville, zoning is really big in order for us to be able to have more flexibility and density, which is one of the keys to making housing more affordable. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I jump in? So for those who know, I'm the chair of the land trust, so Luis, thank you for being on board. There is no silver bullet to solve this problem. There's a silver buckshot. We just happen to be a couple pieces of habitats, a couple parts of the full buckshot private sectors. But just to talk a little bit about the permanent affordability of the hard work states in Albemarle County, we took $650,000 and partnered with Stanley Morton to 23 units over in Spring Hill Village in Avon. We just resold our first unit over there. So basically the $30,000 per unit has now translated into another affordable house for only one $30,000 unit. So the young person who sold that walked away with $35,000, is moving up the housing ladder into a market rate house. Another single mother moved in at 80% or below 80% AMI to buy the house. She will start building up her equity and appreciation and so forth and so on and move in there. But that 650 divided by 23, I math it by roughly 30 grand, will consistently give. Right. And that's the secret, in my opinion, that, you know, it'll constantly, for our model, our little piece of the buckshot of the solution, it'll consistently give. I may be making a plug for money, but in any event, it's a consistent. So I just wanted to share that we literally just closed on it a week ago. So it worked. It's great. It worked very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Other questions or things? Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Item, the fiscal year 25 budget. Ruth, you're gonna walk us through this one?
Yep. So the fiscal year 25 budget, there was a handout. I will pull it up on the screen. in just a second. Looks very similar to last year's budget, $50,000. I have it broken out by activity and number of hours and approximate cost. You will see that the strategic plan implementation has a large number of hours that is entirely the AmeriCorps Vista that we would have for next year. So that we're looking right now to fill the Vista role that Davy is in. She's with us through mid-August, and new Vista would potentially be starting in mid-August. We are planning for the 2025 summit right now. All of the expenses for that are not in this budget because that is going to be funded separately. And I'll let Lori Jean talk about that in a couple minutes. Do you all have any questions about this? I know I've talked with the executive committee a bit about increasing the annual budget, but we haven't come to any solutions on that yet.
Questions?
So right now, this is just funded entirely by local government contributions.
Okay.
Okay. There's no action associated with that.
Under old business, which is really good business, we had worked on and kind of pitched or kicked off these discussion groups back at the last quarterly meeting. And we've had 3 different groups that were established, and then we've had 3 different levels of participation or success. So I'll just do a quick report on that. Margaret was going to report out on the rural group, but was unable to attend today. So we could probably have that full report out at a separate meeting, but I do know they met twice. I've heard some feedback about the conversations, but I've yet to see like a summary of that, of how it went. But in the interest of time, I think we can get that summarized for Margaret and those who co-chaired that group and get that put out. For the urban group, I have to take some responsibility here. For the second meeting, the group did meet the first time in April, had a very rigorous discussion. There were about 30 some different topics talked or discussed relative to the urban issues. And I was wondering in May, like, oh, why isn't the group meeting yet? And found out that I was responsible for scheduling the meeting. So I think that I had that conversation with my team. So that group will still need to have the second follow-up meeting to build off of the good work of that first one. So I apologize that that responsibility slipped. I did not have that on my to-do list. So we'll get that group to meet. The homeless group did not organize and meet, but I think that there are some underlying issues just related to the folks who took on that responsibility, relative to some workload. So we're planning to follow up with them and see if we can get that one up off the ground, especially hearing some of the presentation material here today, especially in the eviction one. That would be one that I have some good piece. So again, this was a way to get executive committee members, full partnership members engaged elsewhere, having people that were not necessarily appointed to the group engaged to be part of the conversation. Ultimately, so like the urban group or the rural group could be there. They could have initiatives that they're going to suggest to the executive committee that potentially could be worked on. And that was the purpose behind the discussion groups. So you know, whether like the rural group sounds like it's complete at 2 meetings, which is fine. So we'll see how it plays out the rest of the summer. Summer's a little interesting time for any of these meetings. So that'll kind of be a carry through to September, I think. Any other questions or comments on that one?
Mr. Chairman, the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission put a good little write-up on this that I received on the 23rd. Uniting Voices to Solve Housing Challenges, where they kind of have a breakdown of urban funding, you know, what the discussions were. So
yeah, the urban group, I know the funding to build the housing. I know that was one that rose to the top. Development area expansion was a conversation that rose to the top.
I just think if we can send the link out to everybody, that might be some good reading.
Yeah, that's good. We'll do that. That was Davey, right? Put that- Thank you, Davey. You'll help me put that link up?
Well, thank you.
All right, so staff updates, we'll move to number 7, and the first is the Vista update on policy matrix. Davey?
Yes, I'm happy to pull it up if we have the ability to do that. I do have a draft of it, yeah. Okay, so this is the draft version of the policy matrix. This will not be its final form, but this was kind of what we hosted it on to have the discussions with the locality planners. So we have talked to each county at this point. Some we have talked to twice. Stacy has been a wonderful resource, especially for Albemarle County. But in this, it kind of comprises 2 different elements of the strategic plan. So it's both sort of the resourcing the stakeholders and also education. So it should be providing basic definitions of overarching affordable housing policies and through different topics and different strategies. The city implementation of that is basically providing specific information by community on any work that has been done in these specific topics. So Stacy was kind enough to provide some information on Albemarle County Board of Supervisors and their anti-displacement resolution. So each link will give you relevant resource information. If there is any comprehensive plan reference to that, that will be included as well, and any relevant toolkits. So I won't click on too much because I know it's going to be a lot of links in here, but you can kind of see that we have policies on displacement prevention, various developer incentives, different zoning policies and strategies. Manufactured housing is to do. That has been a very loaded topic and a little bit complicated to figure out exactly what the scope of including that in this is. So I would love some feedback from, yes, I was talking to you, Jesse. Yeah, and I had reached out, I think you had actually connected me with somebody to kind of get some community connection. So I would love to speak with you a little bit more about that. But we do have land banks. Obviously, we don't have any local land banks, but we have kind of a toolkit of resources that have been put together. And then homelessness, if anyone's has specific housing first policies enacted, if they've mentioned it in a comprehensive plan. I know Housing Albemarle had made a reference to incentivizing and prioritizing applications if they utilized a housing first approach. So those sort of references are in here. Community resources like list of our shelters and links to their pages. I would love to speak to Luis from the Land Trust because we also have a land trust section that I think could be built out even further. We do have Piedmont on here and any potential toolkits for starting up your own land trust. But I think we could probably even flesh this out a little bit further. But that is kind of what we have right now. I'm still in conversations with the county planners to make this a little bit broader. It will be hosted finally on the TJPDC site because right now it is on GitHub, which is not accessible to everyone, is certainly through their employed servers. So we're hoping to actually build out this as a section on the dashboard that will be a longer page with more GIS information, data from the ACS, and ideally with the housing study, it will be even further extended. But this is kind of what we have right now. I would love to pass it on to partnership members next to get feedback because I think taking it in small chunks at a time has been very helpful. It's very dense. So for each individual county that you guys can provide information on, I'd love to receive it. So that should be coming soon.
Questions here? Thank you. And then the, Regina, you have an update on the 2025 housing summit plan?
So the Summit Planning Committee has been doing amazing work. We have some representatives here. We are planning to most likely still be in the Omni again, March of 2025. We're looking at probably March 7th, but we have to do some details with the Omni to kind of really pin down that date. We'll still have the event the night before. We have a keynote speaker. Erica Sims had really risen to the top when we had talked to folks from this whole group. And she is very excited. And I actually talked with her this morning, and she is already thinking about how to really incorporate a bunch of powerful messages that will address the broad range of people that are in our audience and how each part of the RHP, the different, what do you call it, Keith? The legs of the stool, how pillars, thank you. How all of us have a different role to play. We are talking to a lot of different potential speakers. We've got some really good folks who can talk to workforce housing issues and really communicate that in a language that people can hear. Comprehensive planning, land banks, preventing displacement, for-profit affordable housing developers, pulling them in from other parts of the region. Housing first policies, there's a lot of great things on the docket, and then we're talking to people from all around about joining and bringing their expertise to our location. We ultimately have about 25,000 secured so far. We need about 50,000 more to make it happen. So we have developed a sponsorship database that we're going to be working through. Everybody on the RHP is welcome to participate in fundraising and gathering sponsorships for this event. It's been so amazing. I got to go to the last one. I didn't get to go to the first one, but it's really built so much from the very first, from what I've heard about it, just kind of laying the foundation pre-pandemic to the last time I remember, it was very clear. These are what the issues are that we need to address. And this time really looking at how do we bring solutions? How do we bring everybody together and keep pushing things forward? You've heard some great presentations today about people who are doing amazing work already. And we know that the need is so great. We just aren't hitting it yet. So if you can help with sponsorships and fundraising and you're willing to just step a toe in and even just contact one person who might have the decision-making power to support that, reach out to me. And Lori Jean Talon, if you can't find my contact information, Ruth has it. And I can get you hooked into that. If you have other thoughts on it and you aren't on the planning committee, we still welcome all of your input. This is an RHP event, so this is about everybody here. But yeah, I think it's starting to shape up. We're about 9 months out, but we're starting to get a clear picture of what it could look like. So thank you for all of your participation in that. Any questions? Oh my gosh. Do you want to say from crisis to solution, tackling affordability challenges? So we're currently finalizing the logo, so that will be soon. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Yes, that was a good one. That was kind of agreed upon by everybody who voted on that survey that you guys completed. So thank you for doing that. Yeah. Any other comments?
Get your voice back. You're gonna win the fundraising competition. I'll wait a little bit.
So for anyone who doesn't know, these two gentlemen right here had a great competition. Yeah, we settled the invoices, but all the money came to us instead. But so if anyone would like to join this competition, it's a good time from being on the outside watching it happen. But yeah, let me know, and thanks again, and just let me know if there's anything that you'd like to make sure that we're centering as we're planning it, or any feedback. I'm very open to that. Thank you.
We have a quick update on the 24-25 American Register recruitment.
Yeah, so I have been advertising and interviewing for the Meritor Vista person for next year. Right now, I'm still in the process of trying to figure out who that person's gonna be and, seeking additional applicants through our network, but we do have some good possible candidates for next year. So if you know of anyone who you think would be a really great fit for this role, please encourage them to apply. And I'm so sad.
Hard to believe you've been here almost a year already.
I know, it feels like it flew by.
All right, we can be at a point on that, so thank you. So that will take us to number 8 and our roundtable, and we are actually somehow got ahead of schedule by a few minutes, so I think it's a little extra time. So what I'll do is I'll just go around the room. This is when we take a moment to share what's happening in our space and report out. So I'll just start on the. I'll start with a guy who's losing his voice and see how far we can get. Is this right?
I think Nelson is certainly, as we go into our zoning conversation, that's a huge deal as it relates to housing. There's definitely an interest amongst the county to figure out what that is. Political backlash is pretty strong, and it's politically expensive, especially with certain self-interest communities in our county. They are very well organized and they're going to do a lot, and they have the time, the money, and the ability to be against any concept that's remotely affordable housing. Yeah, I say that there's also a huge demographic, and that is very supportive of affordable housing. You just all know that one is a lot more interested in fighting against it than for it. So trying to overcome some of that as we look into our rezoning. We also, as a county, are looking to do potentially a map overlay, so actually remapping our whole county. We're in a rezoning, so that's going to take 2.5 years, I'm sure, and then mapping will happen after that. So we hope to at least not have to do this again for another 56 years. That's the goal. For context, we haven't updated our maps since the 70s. And for zoning, like we haven't done a true redone in probably the same amount of time, so we want 50-60 years. So we still have like tavern definitions in there, which I proudly use that on my time with my properties. But there's some specific zoning that's changed related to manufactured housing like this. We just designed and built our first manufactured home that is a duplex, and it's approved by HUD. I'm not a whole bunch of them, but you can actually, from factory in Virginia, which was the first manufacturer of it in Virginia, purchase one of these for less than $100,000. You can't do that in many other contexts. So a lot of y'all's zoning, ours included, don't fit that because it says manufactured housing or duplex, not a duplex manufactured home. So there's a lot of things of that nature that we have to overcome and get caught up with. But I think one thing I do want to encourage us for, and my board often quizzes me on, they're like, what do we do here at RHP? And I strongly encourage them, like, well, we're sending the right guy, but we need to do a little bit better on conversion, if that makes sense. How is it that we can get these, my board members and other county board members to participate in this stuff is important. I mean, they're sending their housing people, but I feel like I'm doing a good job, but we're not converting these people into active listeners and solution makers, if that makes sense. So whatever it is, I hope we can.
Jesse, did you find when we did the road show, was that helpful?
That was good. We have a new board now, so.
Yeah.
That's it.
Do it again.
Yeah, we had to do the road show. Yeah. Road show is good. I think you should do that, once a year. I think that's, but I almost think that the better conversations that are had are the ones that happen one-on-one after the meeting. So how do we create those is what I'm most interested in.
Thank you. We'll jump to it online. Tim, Highland, do you want to give us a quick update?
Sure, I'd love to. We just submitted our final application to Louisa County to construct 25 affordable units adjacent to our offices on about 7 acres. So that'll be about 6 months before it gets through DEQ and Virginia Department of Health and the county for permits. We have also received an agreement from the railroad, which was a huge impediment for us. Water and sewer had to pass under the railroad in order to access it for this community. So having an agreement almost in place, the railroad has approved the agreement. We need to go through final approval with our attorneys and sign it and pay the $13,000 fee that allows them to look at it. So that is great progress. We're a little further behind on our construction of 17 units in Fluvanna County, but that one is progressing as well, and we should have final application on that one shortly also. We are wrapping up our year end right now as well, and we'll again hit about $400,000 in home repairs, which Davey, I'm really interested in seeing more of your presentation, because to us, the anti-displacement and aging in place is a huge part of that program for us. So getting more facts and figures around that, it has a massive impact in our area. And really enjoying kind of getting this rural discussion group off the ground. Kudos, Jesse, on the involvement in Nelson County. Also, the involvement from people in Albemarle County has been outstanding. We are working on educating our Board of Supervisors a bit more in Louisa County and Fluvanna, and I think that's going quite well. They're starting to understand the tie-in of housing and economic development, and are more aware. It's a little more difficult to ignore what is going on all over our counties. But I think that discussion group has been very, very helpful, and appreciate, the people from Nelson and Albemarle helping us out in our counties as well to get things going. So I appreciate all that support. And that's all I have.
Thank you. See, Councilor Smoke and Mr. Payne, Councilor Payne, you guys have some updates from Charlottesville?
Well, just a couple of things we've done just very recently. At the presentation last week on homelessness, contrary to the headline in the newspaper, I don't think anybody on council was shocked to learn that we have a homeless problem in Charlottesville, but we haven't quite yet figured out the answer. So we did hear some more about exactly how serious the problem is, but I think that was what you think. And also been having a presentation. We were doing last night meeting with CRHA and hearing about all of the projects that they've got going, and hearing that they want us to basically double our annual contribution toward the amount of money we spend on rehabbing the housing that they have. It's not part of the major project. Gonna figure out where that money is coming from, but it's definitely a problem. Michael?
Yeah, I would add to that. I think the presentation from the homeless providers was interesting in that providers gave us specific numbers in terms of what they estimated the number of permanent or emergency shelter beds, permanent supportive housing, and transitional housing beds might be needed. So I think the challenge is really how does local government find enough money to build out that many beds of year-round shelter, permanent supportive housing, and transitional housing. The other major thing is staff and the Housing Advisory Committee have been working on a land bank ordinance, which City Council received a presentation on that on July 15th, I think, potentially a vote in August or September on establishing a land bank. Relevant, I think, for the partnership is one of the things discussed is having the structure of it. If other localities wanted to join, structuring it so that they could petition, be able to join, have representation on the board. We figured it's hard enough to stand it up just in Charlottesville, much less trying to coordinate with surrounding localities to initially set it up. So initially it's just Charlottesville, but I think if any other localities wanted to be a part of it, I think that's absolutely something that we're open to down the road, just to keep in mind. And then finally, nothing new, but I think both in Charlottesville and regionally, we're continuing to see the problem of developers buying
properties that are either naturally occurring affordable housing or subsidized and potentially preparing to convert that. And that prevention is just such a huge challenge because we could build all these new units, and then if we lose 200-300 units regionally, what difference did we really make? And I think maybe the city is not systematic enough in thinking about how do we prevent displacement of naturally occurring affordable housing. And these low-income housing tax credit properties are gonna have their affordability periods end in the next 5 to 10 years, but that's it.
Great, thank you. You're back online, Ms. Garcia, and we're gonna push a little bit past our end time, but if we all get quick, we can get a roundtable update in. Ms. Garcia, updates from PHA?
Well, I have just started on Monday of this week, so no real updates from me at this point. I am still getting my feet wet.
Well, we'll give you a pass until the next time.
Thank you, appreciate that.
And then, Ms. Rosenzweig.
All right, well, I'll give you some good numbers and then some bad numbers. Good numbers are, for Habitat, we sold 71 homes last year, which is, a record for us, and it's actually makes us the most productive Habitat affiliate in the world for service. Bravo. Size, affiliate size our size. That's thanks to everybody here. Thanks to the support from local governments, from the planning district, and everybody in this room pretty much had a hand in that. So thank you. That's good. We also completed 15 rehabs in critical home repairs in Louisiana Green, which is where there seems to be a real primary problem there. And so we're looking to expand that. And we are a little bit more than a year away from finishing the first phase of Southwood, which is about 360 units, 65% of which can be affordable. Our average AMI is about 32%. 85% of the people who are staying at Southwood are staying as homeowners, and 90% of the people at Southwood are choosing to stay, which is compared to national averages for redevelopments. The national average is, depending on what source you look at, is either 11% or 20%. And so we're up doing that by a factor of like 9 times. So we're pretty good about that. And that's thanks to everybody in this room who's helped us do it. Here's the hard stuff. We stepped into Southwood and Sunrise a couple of decades ago because of the burning need. That burning need continues. There are 20 million people in the United States of America who own their trailers but not land beneath them. It's a burning crisis across the country because they have no rights to their land. And there are 2 such situations here in this region that are burning right now. One is the 605 mobile home park in Louisa. So the residents have been working with legal aid, and they brought us in, see if there's anything we can do to support them. They're not in danger of immediate eviction, like proactive eviction, but their rents are looking to double. The new owners of the National Hedge Fund is looking to double the rent. Most of them. And then more recently, in Belmont, Carlton, in the city, one of the largest, actually maybe the largest remaining mobile home park in the city, is under contract for $7 million. At that price, there's no way that they're going to keep that land use, so those residents will all get evicted. So a number of us, thankfully, thanks to Delegate Hudson, there is a new law that passed through the General Assembly that provides 60 days for nonprofits or the residents from that group to make an offer. I don't believe that it's a binding offer. It's not a right of first refusal, but at least there's a 60-day notice period. And so a number of us are getting together to see if there's any Hail Mary that we can do to save those folks. That's about 70 of the most vulnerable families in the area. If that property gets resold, that's 70 families that will be homeless.
And that the Carlton Mobile Home Park in Charlottesville is 66 units. Easily over 200 people, all at risk of basically becoming at least temporarily homeless. So it's definitely very unfortunate.
We Habitat feel a moral and ethical obligation to step in if we can.
Thank you, Dan. She, yeah.
Still working through our affordable housing budget.
Very good. Ron?
Can I just repeat what Bessie said? With regard to affordable housing in our county, there's a lot of development going on, none of it in this sector. And given the change in board members that happened at the beginning of the year, I don't see that situation changing, so. So most of the focus right now with regard to planning and zoning is on commercial, and we are planning to create a new district type that's technology flex R&D type zone along the designated growth area of 29 corridor. And also we've doing some work with regard to what our position or plan and zoning ordinances are going to be with regard to solar farms and data centers. So actually a big crisis. Trying to figure out the data center energy usage thing. I have to figure out what I do.
Great.
I'm really excited about the new zoning. And we're looking at a lot of sites, so I want to offer here. If you are aware of a site that has new density potential tied into affordable housing, I want a quick look at it to understand what the site might yield. Just give me a call and I'll do a quick study for you. See if we can get some of these things under construction. And I'll just bring them to people like Dan for you. And others have talked to the different not-for-profits specific to sites that people may be aware of that have potential to be future. Thank you, sir. Let me one more thing. Yep. Thank you so much, the executive.
We've enjoyed having you, sir. We may will still be giving us input, even though it might not be. Mr. Park.
I guess being respectful of everybody's time, we've got a number of projects under construction, a number in development, and if anybody has any idea on how to reduce interest rates, we would.
Yes.
Yes, as you all know, though, my connection here is through transit, so I'll report out a little bit on transit. Tomorrow, the Regional Transit Partnership will be meeting, and we'll hear a presentation from Ben Chambers from the city and Ann Wall from the county, who will be proposing a really early draft of what the Charlottesville-Albemarle Regional or Charlottesville-Albemarle Transit Authority bylaws might look like. So that's pretty exciting because, as you know, that our partnership was established with the idea of moving to an authority. We all know we can't pay for transit out of our operational funds or continue to and have a limitless transit system. So that's the beginning. Our charter from the General Assembly says that the region, this Charlottesville-Albemarle Transit Authority has to begin with the city of Charlotte. So we're starting that discussion tomorrow. And then we've been visiting, Ann and Ben have been visiting the other counties around, saying this is what we're doing. We'll follow with our work, as well as the University of Virginia. And once we figure this out, then we'll be inviting other folks to join us. Of course, the key discussion point is where's the funding going to come? Not going to go into that now. The only other thing that I wanted to just mention was that Kat sponsored a trip to Champaign, Urbana, looking at the University of Illinois' model of how to what fuel to use for transit systems. They have been sort of a model out there, of course, 59,000 university students there.
And so we were looking at their transit model. They provide all the transit for the community and the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana students, as well as their public school system. So, and I say public school systems for middle and high school. Really great trip. Michael was with us and Lloyd was with us, and we had some other folks. And using, and I guess I could kind of narrow it down to hybrid electric, and then they are producing their own hydrogen or hydrogen fuel cell, which is absolutely clean and is really, I think we were all thrilled to see the model. And Montgomery County just announced that that's what they're moving to. Fascinating. They must have visited Champaign-Urbana as well. Anyway, I'll stop with that, but exciting times, I think, for transit in this community. And we all know how transit and affordable housing vary, so. Thank you.
I'll keep it short if this is possible. Greg, I'm gonna take you up on that offer. I can't get into the detail. The land trust is operating underneath the contract with study period to take a single family detached lot and put 6 affordable houses. So definitely tap into your brain power there. I'm gonna make a plug on the summit, right? This thing is gonna be focused on solutions, not, hey, what's the problem? We are 50 grand short. Jesse and I joke around on trying to raise money, but if we don't raise that 50,000, we're not gonna be able to put a summit together and talk about solutions. So, people that you know, knock on the door, let's try opening up some checkbooks and make that magic happen. That's my sense. Thank you, sir.
We gotta do the night before thing, that would be last night.
We're gonna do the night before.
Starts.
I'll also be short and sweet. So I do a lot of work with a relatively new group called the Charlottesville Area Tenant Leaders Association. And when they first started meeting several months ago, they identified affordability as their top concern, but also felt like that was a very hard solution to come at from where they all are. And so what they have worked on is customer service, because they all live in LIHTC, low income housing tax credit properties, and have found that their property managers rotate between properties, and that relatively uniformly, the customer service is very difficult, very lack of respect, lack of responsiveness. So they approached the city and the county about putting together a training for landlords. And it happened to coincide with a training that CRHA was also planning because of new HUD inspection requirements called Inspire, which are going to be a higher standard and may end up forcing some people out of the Section 8 receiving mode. But at any rate, they had a speaker from Home Housing Opportunities Made Equal who covered customer service and other fair housing issues, and it was a good success. And I think they'll continue that training probably twice a year with a collaboration between CRHA and Albemarle County Office on Housing. Those were the two primary movers and shakers making that happen.
Thank you. I guess I would, in quick summary, say that we put under $2 million in our housing account this year in the budget, and that money obligated will be quickly gone come July 1. So we know that. And we'll be curious to see how the remaining 12 months go on the heels of what you heard with the funding in the presentation today, and incentives and other things about funding coming from the public sector. It's a tough conversation when you're looking at the budget in total. So it'll be an interesting year in Albemarle, and certainly one that will be driving some perspectives and discussion leading into next year's budget, which we've already started to think about and how we're going to fix and things like that. The only other thing I would mention real quick is that in addition to the summit and some of the other budget items for the partnership, if the discussion groups come forward with some potential initiatives that the RHP or possible things that the RHP could work on, that's not in the current budget. So that would also put a money crunch on us to may have to do either some separate fundraising, grant seeking, combination of all of the above, pull off getting those initiatives in. One of which Mr. Smith has talked about in the past about doing a regional study on the housing market and what the return on investment is, similar in a lot of ways to what Wellman Cooper did to the area for the defense industry, about understanding what the housing market would look like. Which would then also then drive decisions about policy wise of why investing in housing is a good idea, not just affordable housing, but all housing. And if we're not thinking in that way, it could be in our economic or local economy to the detriment of local economy. In the right order. So that's something that we've started to brainstorm a little bit more, get some cost estimates on, and we'll be speaking more about at the executive committee level and hearing more about the partnership. But I think that's information that all of the localities could benefit from as we decide on all of these things and trying to solve the issue. So just throwing that out there to keep it on the radar. There'll be some money push here as well. So I apologize for going over time today, but we would like to be able to get all the roundtable piece again. Again, I appreciate everybody attending. The next executive committee meeting is scheduled for July 24th. And the next full partnership is slated for September 25th. And I hope you all enjoy a wonderful summer and stay cool in the heat. We'll see you at the next time that we're able to see each other. So if there's no objection, we will adjourn.
Thank you.